Hello and welcome to Opportunity Homes regular board meeting. A few reminders before we begin. I will begin recording the meeting.
Recording in progress.
Please use the microphone on your screen to mute and unmute. If you're on a phone, please use *6 to mute and unmute. A reminder to turn on your microphone and speak into it. The red light will turn on when the microphone is active. Captions have been enabled for this Zoom meeting. To modify your preferences, select Captions in the meeting controls at the bottom of your Zoom window. I will now begin to conduct roll call. Chairwoman Dr. Ana Cha Guzman.
Present.
Vice Chair Gabriel Lopez.
Here.
Commissioner Gilbert Casillas.
Present.
Commissioner Dalia Contreras.
Here.
Commissioner Lauren D. Dantzler.
Here.
Commissioner Olga Coffin.
Present.
Commissioner Ignacio Perez. Doug Ponick, Board of Commissioners Attorney.
I'm here.
President and CEO Ed Hinojosa Jr.
I'm here.
And our interpreter is located at the back of the room and available as needed. You may now begin to call the meeting to order.
Thank you. The Board of Commissioners or its committee may hold a closed meeting pursuant to Texas Government Code 551 for consultation concerning attorneys and client matters, real estate, litigation, personnel, and security matters. The board or committee reserves the right to enter to closed meeting at any time during the course of the meeting. We will go now to public comment.
All right, our first public comment is Gregory Jackson.
Good afternoon. My name is Greg Jackson. I'm one of the co-chairs for West End Hope in Action. I'm here on behalf of the Lincoln Heights. Mr. Sadalia has already probably came before you all with the master plan to tear the facility down and move forward. And what we're here for is to just to make sure that y'all vote in that process to move this item forward, to take it to City Council where funding can be appropriately sought after, where we can move forward with construction. And because it's needed, number one. As you know, the facility's been there since 1942. And for the history, I think a lot of times we don't know the true history of things. Given the fact that it was built in 1942 for mostly black folks, soldiers at that particular time, and they were not constructed in a manner that was even decent in 1942. So to have folks still living in that facility 82 years after the fact, I think it's time to tear down and move forward, and that's what we're here for. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Tomas Guadiano.
Good afternoon. My name is Tomas Guadiano, and a 7-year military veteran of the Air Force. I have lived and a West End Hope in Action organization member. I have lived in the Lincoln Heights for 10 years. At the July 19th, 2023 Operations and Real Estate Committee meeting, I and our delegation requested funding for the Lincoln Heights apartments. Our delegation consists of not only the Lincoln Heights residents, but non-government organizations such as the West End Hope in Action organization, the Frank Garrett Community Center, Saldana Associates that have done the planning, District 1 and District 5 input, and local Black and Catholic churches in the surrounding area. So we again resident today are asking for federal funding for a new Lincoln Heights apartments. And I thank you.
Our next speaker is Lily Quintanilla.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lily Quintanilla. I was born in 1946, so I was born right after the Lincoln courts. I'm 77 years old, so you can imagine how old they are. I have seen no significant investment nor any improvement in the Lincoln Heights courts. We have seen the blueprints of Mr. Saldana, letting us know how important it is to rebuild the Lincoln Heights courts. They've shown how they're trying to eliminate crime by maybe circling a fence in a certain area. They have no playground. Where do they go? They go just across the street to the Frank Garrett Center, which is good. But for their safety, they need a playground. So there's a lot of improvements that need to be done, and I thank you.
Our next speaker is Mary Kathleen Canning Meisel.
Mary's good, thank you. Good afternoon, I'm Mary Meisel, and I'm a member of the West Side Neighbor Association, WEHA, and a property owner 2 blocks down from east of Lincoln Heights at 2001 West Poplar. I'm here together with the Lincoln Heights Resident Association, whose voices were heard and whose concerns were addressed in the Lincoln Heights Master Plan created by Saldana and Associates. The residents see little value in any remediation of the property beyond complete redevelopment. The 83-year-old, 83-year-old structure has obsolescence that's easy to see just from driving by. As Lily said, there's no playground for the folks. In this heat right now that we're experiencing all across the nation, window units make no sense at all, and that's what the residents have there. Many of the residents are seniors, children. It's just not appropriate. Lincoln Heights was one of 5 projects funded back in the late 30s and 40s. Contemporaneously, Victoria Courts was built as well. Saw fit 23 years ago to demolish that structure completely and rebuild it with low-income housing, market rate apartments, and townhouses. Lincoln Heights residents have waited. Since then, it's their turn. West Side community is waiting for their turn. Please move forward the plan by Saldana and Associates and give us a new Lincoln Heights option. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Vincent Robinson.
He wasn't able to come back yet, madam.
That concludes public comment.
Yes, and are there any citizens to be heard?
Yes, there are citizens to be heard, but we will begin with a briefing regarding citizens to be heard.
Citizens wishing to speak. Citizens wishing to speak on issues not related to items posted. Okay. Go ahead.
I believe there's supposed to be the statement before for the briefing.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was on board.
Yeah, you waited.
Citizens wishing to speak on issues not related to items posted on the agenda should personally request to be placed on the Citizens to be Heard roster prior to 12:45 or register online. Citizens will be given up to 3 minutes to speak. Each citizen will be permitted to speak only once at any regular board meeting. A Spanish-English translator will be available to citizens needing translation. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So this is our first Citizens to be Heard briefing, and so moving forward, you will probably most likely see me and be kind of give a little summary of what was brought up by our residents that has spoke at our last board meeting. However, there will be a more detailed due to confidentiality will be in your board packet, but I do want to give some highlights. And so there's a couple of items that were mentioned, and I'm going to kind of group these together just because they went hand in hand, just not necessarily on here. So the Lewis Chatham apartment safety and Lofts at Marie McGuire safety, I just want to remind the board that both Ed and myself, along with Joelle Tabar, meet regularly with our tenants unions to address their safety concerns and also look for solutions. In our last meeting, we actually had several of our commissioners join us to listen in, as well as some of our elected officials. Resident quality of life and community outreach. This was in regard to the work that we're doing in the Victoria Plaza Lavaca area. And so, as always, our residents are one of our top priorities within the organization and support services that we can bring and in through different partnerships. In addition, we have a very robust community outreach plan, including the engagement to get buy-in from not just the residents that live at certain properties, but the community that we may be building some new properties in. Springview apartment emergency relocation and the apartment safety. This, I did have the opportunity to brief the board about the situation that happened at Springview, and we recognize any type of relocation is never easy for our residents, but during that time we did find that there was a need to relocate them, and throughout that process our staff was with the residents. We temporarily relocated them to a hotel for their for a couple of days, as well as then relocated them to other public housing properties that met their needs. And last but not least is the OP Schnabel apartment community room. As I reported, our community rooms are available during regular office hours. We often use them as cooling centers because we know, especially when we're all experiencing 100+ degrees, it can get hot. And so those are open, but out of the abundance of caution and feedback that we receive from our residents, we do close those community rooms after hours and on weekends. However, every property, if they have a community room, we do work with the resident council or a key captain, or if they make prior arrangements, if they want to have host an event in the community room, they can work with the property staff. And so we're going to continue looking at our community communication and make sure that all of our residents are aware that those things are happening and available when our staff is not on site. Thank you.
We have one individual signed up to speak for Citizens to be Heard. They are Susan Baldwin.
Hi, my name is Susan Baldwin. I'm a resident at Cottage Creek Apartments. We're under your Beacon Properties, the nonprofit side. Been there 20 years. I have a few concerns for you. Won't mention the date, but we had that we're on the news for a murder-suicide. Cops had knocked out some of the lights. A lot of us residents were calling that Friday, saying you need to fix the lights before it gets dark. It took them 4 days to fix some of the lights. There are still some lights out there. There's one on one building I've reported every single month for over a year that has never been fixed, which makes me wonder, do you guys even look at those lights out there to make sure they're working? Because I know there's other ones like that out there. Also, I know one part can't be helped with the mailman, but when I got my packet today for my recertification, it says need birth certificate. Never had to have that before. And I'm thinking, there are some residents in properties that may not have a birth certificate. How are they supposed to handle that? Maybe you need to put on your Facebook page, because you do put the town hall meetings on that, and you put other updates. Maybe you should put on there saying, in the future, since October such and such date, we suggest you try to get a copy of your birth certificate. And then also, when you know your renewal is coming up, have at least your Social Security letter no more than 3 months old, because some of them may not even remember that. Also, out there, I think you should do a meeting on security, because that Friday, a group of us were talking. It's like, we need a meeting out here. We need to know what's going on. Since you took us back, we've been on the news twice. Once was a fire on a Super Bowl weekend, and then that. And then it's sad when you also see SWAT out there. Because I seen them one day, and I don't like that. Which means you guys need to start doing something out there. You need to talk to the residents and maybe do a safety meeting. I know if you do, one of the aides from the county commissioner's office will come from Calvin Calvert. I know someone from Senator Jose Mendendez's office would try to make it for an aide. Not sure about the council person because I don't know them like I used to, but when we used to do meetings out there for security issues, like every 3 months or every 4 months, we would try to make sure they were there. Plus maybe a few pastors and someone from Metro Health even would be there, along with your head of security of Saha and everything like that, and whoever our safety officers are. Plus, if you do want meetings in that community room, you better make sure you get an AC in there, because the last time we did bingo in there, we had to use an industrial fan, and you can't hear over that too well for some people. So I know you need to make some changes out there, and you need to let your residents know everything, because we're not being told everything out there.
Thank you.
There are no other individuals signed up for citizens to be heard.
Okay, thank you. We'll go on to item 4, which is the minutes. I'm looking for approval for the October 7th, 21st, June 7th, and July 19th meetings. Do I hear a motion?
I motion we approve these 4 meeting items.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's been a motion and a second. All those who approve, say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Same sign. Minutes approved. We'll go on to the consent items. Consideration and approval regarding Resolution 6363, authorizing the revised utility allowance schedule.
I'll make a motion to approve consent items 5 through 12.
There you go.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against, same sign. Consent items approved. Individual item, Board of Commissioners annual elections. Mr. Ponik?
Thank you. Members of the board, every year you elect officers, a chairperson and a vice chair. The secretary is a position held by your CEO, but it is non-voting. So before you today are the 2 positions, chair and vice chair, and typically we take the chair first and then vice chair. To be considered for the office, you have to be nominated, and to nominate someone does not require a second. So if somebody says, "I'd like person A," that's enough to qualify for the election. And then we will take, if there are more than one person nominated for a particular office, we will take them in the order they were nominated, and the goal is to get to a majority vote for one of the candidates to fill that office. So are there any questions? If not, then I would say we have the position of chair or chairperson open first. Are there any nominations?
I nominate Commissioner Gabriel Lopez.
Are there any other nominations? If not, nominations are closed. Now, I would still say let's go ahead and vote to make it official. All those in favor of Gabe Lopez serving as the chair, raise your hands or vote aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any against? None? All right. Congratulations and condolences for the, for the office. I can go ahead and call for the vice chair, or you can do that if you wish. It's up to you.
Okay, now I'd like to make a nomination for vice chair, Commissioner Casillas.
Are there any other nominations? Nominations are closed. All those in favor of Commissioner Casillas serving as the vice chair, raise your hands or say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Congratulations, sir.
Okay.
That concludes the elections.
Okay.
Before we move on, I would just like to say thanks to Dr. Cha Guzman for the years that she served as chair and for being here and standing up for the residents when she did. And I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome. It has been a pleasure for me to be chair. I have been president of 3 colleges and now chaired a SAHA and Opportunity Home, and it has shown me where our monies should go and how important our communities are to take good care of them. And so I have loved being on this board and have loved being chair, and I have spoken to the mayor, and I have decided that because of personal issues of grandchildren and living in St. Louis, we're going to be spending more time in St. Louis, and so I have told them that I'm not going to be serving on this board anymore, and that's why I was not nominated, because I think my time has been well spent. I have loved it, and I think it's time to move on to develop wonderful grandchildren. Onwards we go. It's discussion item number 14, presentation regarding in-person virtual workplace attendance. Muriel Roeder and Brandy.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So what we're presenting today is an update from the presentation we did back in April. We've been asked for some additional information, which we've gathered, and so today we have this update for you. So the first thing we want to talk about is actually the definition for a hybrid workplace. And so basically a hybrid workplace, a hybrid schedule means that there's sometimes when you're in the office and sometimes when you're not in the office and you're at another location, either at home or another location. And it allows employees to work some days in the office and then other days elsewhere, and it does not require a daily, strictly telecommuting to one office location. Next slide. So, due to the pandemic, the hybrid workplace has really become the new normal, and that model just gives us an opportunity to help our workplaces work for everyone. And so knowledge workers and professional office workers really require and expect a high degree of flexibility. And employees are actually leaving jobs that don't have that type of flexibility. And then jobs that don't have a lot of flexibility are it's harder to fill them. It just is. And then the current trends are requiring the evaluation of what the new work week looks like. So a Stanford study was conducted, and they found that people that were remote workers were actually 13% more productive than their office counterparts. And what we found is that when we've started having our virtual meetings, that has allowed for greater flexibility and more inclusivity of staff. And so for here at Opportunity Home, when we have our employee town halls, we see upwards of over 400 or 500 people attending virtually, and we hadn't had that before. And what that allows us to do is make one presentation, everybody hear it, everybody hear everybody else's questions, and everybody hear the answer. So we're not doing separate meetings and some people heard this or some people heard that. So that's been very helpful for us. Also, we found that commute time has been transformed into productivity time. So that time, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, that you would usually drive into work when you're working remotely and from home, you just go downstairs or go across the hall or something to start your day. And the hybrid work model also values work-life balance. So I don't know about anyone else, but sometimes when you have a package being delivered or you have to have a service call at your house, they usually give you a 4-hour window. When you're working strictly from the office, you have to take off from the office to get to the house, for that 4-hour window and be there. And usually they show up at hour 3.5. I'm just saying, if you're anything like me, that's when they show up. So, this work-life balance allows you to be able to schedule those types of things when you're scheduled to be at home. And then that way you're just working up to the minute. Person comes, you let them in, they do their thing, you let them out. So that's one of the things I think a lot of people have really appreciated about the work-life balance. So, next, hybrid is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. So the McKinsey Global Institute, so during 2020, when we were at the height of COVID, office attendance dropped by 90%. Remember, even San Antonio shut down, right? And now, only half of all offices are filled across the United States in any given day. That's today. So any given day, only half of all offices in the United States are filled. And then workers are visiting the office about 3.5 days per week, with knowledge workers visiting the office less. And so in a recent Gallup poll, 8 out of 10 employees expect some type of flexibility going forward, and hybrid workers will change jobs for flexibility. And what we found, and we did some additional research, 35% of our employees currently work a hybrid schedule. And of the 690 current budgeted positions, only 263 were hired prior to July 2020. So that means most of our staff have been hired or will be hired at the time when we're doing a hybrid schedule. And so that's their expectation, and that's what we have as our model at this time. So I'll turn it over to Brandy.
So one of the requests was to kind of look at what other large organizations in San Antonio are actually doing. And so, of course, we try to not always adopt what those policies are, but we really like to look at it. And we wanted to make sure, because many of these employers are our competitors when it comes to staff, and the last thing we want to do is potentially lose staff, as Muriel had suggested, because of the lack of flexibility. And so the city of San Antonio has adopted their hybrid work policy, and they're very, as many of them can see, and I'm not going to go through all of it, they're very flexible. The language is very loosely written about, 2 to 3 days a week, 1 to 4. CPS is not up on there, but I know Muriel did confirm, well, the days, the actual days on their policy is not on there, and that's about a 1 to 4 days a week. And so they're really trying to show and offer the flexibility, which is something that we have adopted, as Muriel said, throughout this time since COVID. And it would help if I turned that remote on. In addition, we as trying to oversee the operations, we're really looking at what hybrid work flexibilities are for our organization, and we always want to reassure the board and our residents. Every single department is covered during regular business hours, and that's a traditional 8 to 5. Our property field staff have been on site. They're on site 5 days a week, but we do, because we know that because they're on site, that they do also need some of that flexibility, like we do what we offer to some of our hybrid workers. And so we do have what we call admin days, and we'll close 4 hours a day just so they can kind of get some administrative work. We recognize our residents needed us and continue to need us, but the traffic at some of these properties do prevent some of these, some of the staff are actually processing that paperwork and getting all the reports submitted. Our assisted housing programs, which is our Section 8 program, those staff members average about 4 days a week here. And so again, we're serving our families on the Section 8 program either virtually, because some of them said that's the way I want to do it, or they could still come in person. And then of course our executive team is out there regularly visiting offices and the office staff as well as residents, and both Ed and I have reported, the times that we're out there and communicating and taking not just advantage of being able to meet with our staff, but also meeting with our residents to get buy-in that way. So what this slide shows is the different flexibilities of hybrid workplaces, flexible work, and then modified. So we have been doing different research. Most everybody is offering that hybrid. The flexible is different traditional outside of that standard 8 to 5, which we have done that in some cases. And then modified, we are starting to hear more and more conversations about what does a modified work week look like, and it's 4 days. There are 2 housing authorities in the state of Texas that have gone to modified work days. And actually, I think more recently, we've all heard that Livonia ISD is actually going to a 4-day school week starting August of this year. And so that was approved. The highlights are basically some of our competitors when we see where our staff is leaving to for the flexibility. And so those are what we're trying to prevent by continuing to be offer these flexible work schedules at the same time meeting the needs of our residents. So just more studies, and this the first graph, it really shows where we were pre-pandemic on where hybrid was and to where we are today. And then as Mario mentioned, kind of that office space, right? So we know that many organizations are making those changes. And so that was something that I thought was really interesting when we were looking through and trying to make sure our policies or how we're doing this align with what the industry is doing or other businesses. And then the other graph is where the expectations of our employees, right? We see that their expectations is roughly anywhere probably between the 2 to 3 days in the office. And so that's what's showing. So again, we're consistent in what is being offered across the country. And then, of course, we all know that what if we made the decision to bring everybody back into the office? And so what would that look like to us? And I actually had the opportunity to talk to Ed about this right before, and I told him, Ed, it feels like it was just, well, probably just last month that I continue, and I know Ayanna has reported out to the board how short-staffed we are. And we've been very pleased to say, and I probably should start knocking on wood, that it's been probably the last 3 weeks that we could finally say that we were fully staffed into maintenance tech positions, even with temps. And I said, it scares me, it frightens me sometimes, and I know these folks are out in the field every day, but to take away, what would that cause when we're talking about, I could actually finally say we're fully staffed, and I said, if we were to take away from the flexibility, because we've heard staff talk to us and say they really appreciate that, we would be losing our staff to those to other industries that says we're going to do that. And then I'm going to be back here saying I can't provide the best customer service because I'm down, 50% of my staff again, and that's really what we're trying to prevent. I think it's critical, the significant loss of knowledge that's going to walk out this organization. I know oftentimes when we're talking to the board, we talk about just you guys sitting on up there on the dais. It takes years to understand this. We don't want to reverse. We've been a hybrid workplace since 2020. It would be devastating to reverse, to go back and lose people just because of the flexibility and see that knowledge going out and having to retrain staff. I think we're going to continue to highlight it's the difficulty of hiring staff. When we have 30% of other companies saying, or more than that, saying we're going to offer hybrid, that's where those staff are going to go. We also, it could impact our regulatory compliance and audit risk, right? As we're losing employees, those are the ones that know, are doing the work and know what it's like, and we don't want to subject this organization to undue hardship just because we're seeing those staff walk out the door. And last but not least, our strategic plan, goals, and outcomes. It would take an impact, right? We need staff here, we need that flexibility, but we also want to make sure that our delivery and our responsiveness would not be impacted. And that's what ultimately we continue to monitor and look at and saying, are we doing what's best to keep our staff here for our residents? We have a video, which we don't necessarily have to show, but, as we had lots of conversations recently about what this, are we doing the right thing? Do we continue to offer this to our staff and be reassured as we're talking with this team? We also look at what are other places doing? What are the reactions when we hear the Elon Musk saying, you're coming back to the office and willing to let people walk out the door? He may be able to do that. We can't do that without hindering our services to our residents. But the city of Austin recently announced that they were actually going to move in October to requiring 3 days back in the office. And that created a protest in Austin. Now, we know Austin, there we go. We all love our city of Austin, and we know that there are unique, but I think when we look about what's happening in San Antonio, I could see that this would be mirrored here. And actually at this protest, if we read this story, there's actually city council individuals sitting up there protesting along with the city employees saying, there's no need, we've made it work, our productivity is still here. And so these are just things that we monitor. We want to make sure that ultimately the decisions are not just for our staff, but they are for our residents. And I just want to reassure the board that, when we're talking about our resident positions and our support positions, everybody is 100% committed to this organization, whether we are working in an office or working at home, being very responsive to our staff. So thank you.
Couple of questions. Executive staff, are you on a flexible schedule? I mean, not all of you are out at the same time, correct? There is always somebody here.
So flexible schedule, I just want to make sure, flexible schedules mean that we're not working 8 to 5. Like I may be a 7 o'clock and maybe a 4 o'clock, which I would love to say that, but it doesn't happen. But we are always covered. So we do have days in the office where we're here as a team. But I like to say, because I myself and Ed go out a lot to the properties, so I may not be physically located in this building, but I'm located outside or out at a property. So you can get a hold of us pretty much anytime, and I like to say 8 to 5, but you've been traveling with me. It's not
I know
out,
that with all of you that have been on conferences, and you're on your phones and your computers throughout the day, tackling and taking care of problems and getting the job done. So I have seen it. The people at that end of the building, where people come in for their interviews or to apply, I know a lot of it's done online now, but a lot of people don't know how. There's always, there's like half of the people are out, half are, or they take different days in the office, but there's always someone there to see someone that walks in.
Absolutely. Our lobbies are always full. Our customer service team is always staffed, and so we always have that. And then the way our Section 8 department works, it's because I'm super excited to say that we're fully staffed, we've actually run out of room in this building in that location. So we have to, in order to make it work, we literally have to do desk sharing, and that's where a lot of our model has gone to, not just with that department. So you'll see it's Mondays, it's where most of those folks are either in the office or at working from home, and then Fridays. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, everybody's in the office with the exception of our more tenured employees because they don't have a place to sit.
Okay. And I know the community at the properties, they're there Monday through Friday because they have to run the property maintenance and everything, and they don't get the choice of working from home a lot of times, but I'm sure they do work from home.
They often do, and so I always have to remind myself, I don't know if I want my maintenance techs doing their work from home when they're supposed to be fixing the resident unit. So they recognize that, right? That's a lot of the conversation that we look at. We're still looking to say, how do we make this, more equitable for our staff? But they also recognize they're here for the reasons to serve, and that their job required them to be there. But we are mindful, like I said, we will shut down a little bit to make sure at least the office staff could work on some files. The maintenance staff maybe are closing out work orders to just give them that moment to get some of that administrative work done.
Okay. So everything's basically covered that needs to be covered with the way you're doing it now in a hybrid situation.
That is correct. Our response time to our staff out in the field does not change whether I am sitting in this office or sitting at a property office or sitting in my office at home.
Okay. I know we visited this a couple of months ago, and we decided, the board didn't take any action on it, and I truly believe that this is an issue that our CEO and president should be handling. Ed should be handling this and making that decision with the executive leadership. So as far as I'm concerned, that's where I'd like to leave it.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing the update. I know as someone who runs a nonprofit, this is definitely something we've had to jury with too, and the workforce is changing So one of the things two things I heard that are exciting, congratulations on staffing. I know we've been looking at staffing reports for a long time, so that was a big lift. And then thinking about how you're showing love to folks who don't have the ability because of the nature of their job to have flexible scheduling. There are a lot of other ways to have them feel loved and celebrated and appreciated for the fact that they're, they're in those roles, right, and supporting the organization. And I totally agree. I think this is great information for the board. This isn't a policy decision, so there's, in my mind, nothing for us to vote on. But it's great to know what's happening and, that you all are thinking about it so deeply. So thanks for the update.
Thank you. Thank you.
So how should we go about this?
So it's just a discussion item today. So if the board expressed an interest in, under the rules of governance, the board does have the authority to set policy. So if, for example, you wish to set a policy regarding this matter, you could put it on a future agenda and have the board vote on the policy. Otherwise, it's a briefing for today.
And the policy would address the availability of flexible hours, the
Right.
3 categories. Okay.
I think so. You'd have to get that specific, probably.
Okay. I think that makes sense for the staff to develop a policy, because even though some of the commissioners may think this is a staff decision, I really think that the board always needs to take responsibility for ensuring that all the employees are being well taken care of, and that we have a just system so that some don't take advantage of things and others don't. So I think it'd be real important to write some policies about it.
So I think what we can do is take a look at the policy the city has and
Yes.
SAWS and CPS, and Muriel, I think, has already collected those, and perhaps draft our own policy.
Yes.
And bring that back at a later date.
Yeah, and you might want a board member to read it through with you so that it makes sense from a board's perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Discussion regarding resident concerns.
I have a couple of things. Brandy, where do we stand on the issue with Casiano that was presented to us at the last meeting? Did you all go out and inspect any of the units to see if any of those pictures, that damage really exists?
So what I will report back to you, Commissioner, is that we are still looking into those pictures that were presented. We have gone through, looked at work orders. The staff has gone back to some of the resident units. Some of the residents have said that those were prior pictures that we did take it. There were some cosmetic issues in one unit that we're going to address. I will have a follow-up, a more detailed report to the board for our September board meeting. I'm trying to think in my head. And then if anything, we could also talk about some of the additional issues or concerns that were raised in closed session.
Thank you. I'd also like to bring up that possibly we revisit the need of the generator at W.C. White. We've had a few power outages here lately. They haven't lasted very long, but we just had one 2 days ago. It was quick, not even a minute, but downed one of the elevators, and thanks to the maintenance manager, he was on site. He was notified by the fire alarm thing, and got Otis out there right away, and everything was back up within a matter of hours. So they did a great job there, but maybe we need to revisit that generator if that's going to continue happening.
So with any of our capital projects, we are looking at it, but what we want to do is make sure that we're addressing larger safety needs across the portfolio. Not to say that that's not, but we also want to make sure that the investment is warranted, especially when we look at outages. And so I have asked for the team to look at it and actually pulling data from CPS to see how often our properties are going, how long, and then what is that financial impact.
And I don't mean just for WC White, but I mean if the needs at any other property also.
There's a few
I would
properties.
be concerned about that also.
President's report?
We have a very long president's report today. There's been a lot of activity over the summer, and we didn't have a meeting last week. So I'll just cover the highlights, the first few items, and we'll leave the report with you to read at your leisure. We have an open house and job fair scheduled for next week at the UTSA campus. Employees will be invited to the open house in order to learn about different departments than their own, and also learn about perhaps jobs that may be available in other departments. So we now have about 650 employees on our budget, so the workforce has grown, and we want to make opportunities available to employees, but we'll also use the afternoon as a job fair for the public and try to recruit people for our employment. We were highlighted on both KSAT and Texas Public Radio this month for our Wi-Fi initiative. We now have 72 properties of our 74 that are Wi-Fi connected. So that's an initiative that the board really, and the board chair really pushed several years ago, and we are very proud of the fact that we're connected. We had a record number of